Hi, everyone. We're back with the Kingfisher at Beyond the 90 independent coverage of Miami FC for the 2026 USL Championship season. This one's going to be quick because I got to run out and get to the Fort Lauderdale United home match against Sporting Jacks. Big match in the USL Super League. But Miami FC opens their USL Championship campaign with a 4-1 loss at Lynn Family Stadium against LouCity. And the scoreline was, quite frankly, flattering at times to Miami FC. It was just really a pretty terrible performance. Worst performance I've seen in the USL Championship thus far this season, with the caveat that I have not watched Detroit versus Brooklyn yet, which is a match that seems to be similarly one-sided. No side performed this poorly last week, I would say, in the USL Championship. Now, of course, this is LouCity we're talking about, and LouCity is the gold standard in the USL Championship, particularly in the regular season. And they came from behind after being really badly outplayed in the first half against Lexington last week. In the league opener for the USL Championship, came back and scored 2 goals. Danny Cruz had to make 3 changes at halftime. Those changes changed the match. If you want to know more about how LouCity looked last week, you can go back and look at my post-match summary from that match. I wrote a detailed summary because I was so excited about that particular match in the start of the season. But for Miami FC today, what can we point out? Dalton Knutson for personal reasons, missed this match. He will be back next week. That is very critical because the back line for Miami FC was pretty terrible. In fact, on the third goal for LouCity, which was Donovan making his first, scoring his first goal, opening his account for LouCity, I think Tulu probably was fouling him in the area and it could have been a penalty. It didn't matter. Donovan scored anyway. So don't need to whistle it back for a pen. First 25 minutes were abject, right? You had LouCity basically playing Miami off the pitch. Confusion, these huge gaps between the back line and the midfield, players out of position, bad giveaways in midfield, guys losing their mark from wide areas. Now and again, you're playing against a midfield of Lambert, Davila, and Serrano, right? You're playing against a great midfield by USL Championship standards, and then you've got Morris and McFadden pushing up the wings for LouCity. This is a tough task for any team in the USL Championship, but Miami FC just off the pace. They have a good 5 or 7 minute spell of play before halftime. They get a goal in that spell, but the second half were awful. Mason Turnbridge, a player I really like, and I loved that signing for Miami FC coming in from Tormenta, a player I've watched a lot of through the years. Very, very excited for him to be here, and he made a difference in the second half after he came on. Really kind of turned the screws a little bit, showed a little bit of creativity, had some original ideas in terms of play in that midfield when he came on, but otherwise it was really poor. In fact, I think Miami was just awful. Angelo Callo, who I think was starting in place of Knutson, he had a nightmare of a match. The fullbacks were poor. Romero lost his mark constantly. And the midfield wasn't much better. Up top, Lucadia, who's a player who's played in the Premier League. I mean, he's that good. He's played a lot in the Bundesliga, scored a lot of goals in the Bundesliga. Nothing. But he was starved for service also. So the goalkeeper, Eli Root, who's going to be in the World Cup for Curacao, can't do anything when you have that sort of back line in front of him. So it was just really poor. Miami goes again next week. It's a work in progress. I mean, this is the case every season, right? We're seeing the roster turned over each of the last 3 years. These performances don't seem to be getting any better over time. There doesn't seem to be much difference in the play between 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025. At least the roster doesn't have the bloated payroll it did in 2022. That's the way we can, I got my years wrong. 23, 24, 25, 26. It seems like everything is running in one continuum. At least the roster doesn't have the bloated payroll it did in 23 or, quite frankly, in 25. I think this is a more economically built squad, not quite like 24, but just seems the same nonsense. And if I'm Gaston Mondoni, I'm getting concerned. Now, I don't know. I don't have any indication that Miami FC is going to make a move. They brought him back for another season, but you see a performance like that, you're so poorly organized and poorly structured that you get pulled apart in the first 25 or 30 minutes. Look, we know LouCity is tough, particularly up there. They are the gold standard in this league, as I said, but you can't play that poorly in the first 30 minutes of a match, the first match of the season, when you had an extra week of training camp versus everybody else, and expect to. And I could see the scoreline being 4-1 because eventually LouCity's quality stands out. But to be undone the way they were, that's on the coach. And I'm not involved with the club anymore, okay? So those of you who are out there, I know some of you have said, hey, you can influence decisions of the club. Last year, you guys were sending me messages like that. No, I can't anymore. I would be lobbying to put him on a clock here. Maybe if things don't really pick up by the end of April, you've got to make a move. In fact, maybe it's sooner. Tampa Bay made a move end of March last year. Birmingham made a move end of March last year. Now, neither team got into the playoffs, but in the case of Tampa Bay, they gave it a good go because they made that move early. And for Miami FC, I think that's got to be in the cards.